Hello again and welcome to another tutorial video on how to use MMS. My name is Ruth Easterling. I work at Exelon Texas on the MMS team. In this video we're going to cover merging your data. We'll start with exporting advanced finds to Excel, and then we'll go on to a few basic formulas that I usually use when I'm analyzing data. So let's get started here in MMS. I'll start by doing an advanced find, and it's really important in my advanced find that I have columns that will match in both of my searches. So for the purposes of this exercise, I'll do one search for a socioeconomic record and another search for the loan application record. So say that from the socioeconomic you wanted to know how many years of education the applicant had, and then from the loan application you wanted to know how they did on the auto review status. So let's start. In my look for, I'll change this to socioeconomic. And then I'll go ahead and edit my columns. Here, when editing the columns is when you'll need to make sure that you have a field that's going to match between the socioeconomic record and the loan application record. MMS is currently developing a field called Loan Application ID, but in the meantime we'll use the created on timestamp. So what I'll do is I'll change my record type to loan application, and then I'll scroll down to the created on field, and this date and time will go all the way to the second, so it's pretty reliable that I won't have duplicate created on times. It serves as a unique identifier between all of the loan applications. And I also wanted to know information about how many years of education they have. Just say if you were curious about whether those with more or less education do better or worse in auto review. Okay? And let's go ahead and just say that we want to do it for loan applications that were won last year. So I'll put another, I just went down here and I went down to related to the loan application so that I could use a field from there. And then I'll do status equals 1, and the actual close date equals last year. Last year. There it is. Okay. So there we have the field that we'll use to link it to the loan application, created on, and here we have the field that we're actually examining, the years of education. So I'll go ahead and export this. I'll hit static worksheet with records from all pages in the current view. This way I'll have all of my records. See down here, this page only shows the first 250, but I wanted to be able to look at all 939. So I hit export, and I'll go ahead and open this. It will pop up with a window that says I'm trying to open it, but it's in a different format. And I'll say yes, I'm comfortable opening it, and I'll show you what that means. So here when I go to File and Save As, it said that it would export as a .xls, but you can see here that it's actually a .htm or a .html. So I need to go ahead and change that to a I use XLSX because that one has the most updated formulas from Windows. And I'll just go ahead and put this, I'll put it here in my documents. So this is MMS training merging data. Okay, so I have my first set of data. Let me go back into MMS and get my second set. I'll go back to Advanced Find, and this would be a good time for me to save it, but since I don't plan to reuse this, I'm not going to save it. Instead, I'll change my look for to a different record type. Now I'll look at the loan applications. And I know that I modified it, but I don't intend to save, so I'm okay leaving this page. First, let me go ahead and edit my columns. Remember last time we had that column that was created on, so I want to make sure to also have that one in this find. Here we go, timestamp. And let me take off a few of these extra columns that I don't want to look at. Take this off. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at auto review status. Here we are, AR status. And I'm going to set the parameters to be the same in this find as it was in the other find. The actual close date had to be last year, and the status had to be 1. Status equals, and I'll go ahead and select 1 and move it over. Alright, so I hit for results. Notice that this one has 919 records. The other one had 939 records. So what that shows me is that 20 of the loan applications had socioeconomic records but did not have loan applications, which is okay. It's okay that they're not exactly match to match, because when I use my VLOOKUP formula, I'll be able to filter out which ones have data and which ones don't. So again, I hit export here in the top right, and then it gave me this pop-up window, and I say that I want all the records, and I hit export. Then when I open it, it will say the same thing, that it's in a different file name. See, it claims to be an XLS, but remember it's actually a web page. So I'll say yes, I trust it, I'm ready to open it. And for me, I always like to keep as many or as few workbooks as possible, because it helps me to navigate them. So I'll go ahead and move this one over to the other workbook. I'll show that one more time. So I right-click on the tab, and then I click Move or Copy, and I use this drop-down menu to pick the other workbook, MMS Training Merchant Data. For me, I like to move them to the end. So this way I have both of those sheets in this single workbook. And this is a good time to save again. So here we have the column for created on, and I know that it's a type of loan application. And here we have that same data, the created on loan application. And that's how I'm going to merge these two data sets. So what I'll do now is I'll put in another column for years of education. And this, I have it set to general, and now I'll put in my formula for VLOOKUP. So VLOOKUP is just equal sign, then the word VLOOKUP, and an open parentheses. This first one, lookup value, is going to be that field that matches the other field in your other data set. So for us, it's going to be that created on timestamp. And then you do a column, and next is the table array. So what that will show me is a table that has the column for our matching data, as well as the other data that I want to insert into this sheet. So I go to my other sheet, I start my table with the matching column, which is our created on timestamp, and then I drag it through the whole table. It has to go from left to right. And then I hit F4, which will put these little dollar signs, and what that's going to do is just freeze my table so that everything will always be within that range, and it won't scroll down as I scroll down through my original data set. Then I put in another column, and it will say column index number. So here in column C, I'm not sure if you can tell, column C is the timestamp, and column D is the years of education. So D is the second column, so I do number 2. And then I always put in the word false to make sure I don't have any false matches. false will make sure that it's an exact match. All right, so I hit enter, and that's how I know that this record has 3 years of education according to my socioeconomic data. And then I like to double click here, and that will give me all of these records. Our data is not perfect, so sometimes I have not applicable, and what that means is that this timestamp does not appear anywhere in this list of timestamps. So there was nothing to find, and it just says not applicable. But we're pretty close. We have most of our data populated, which is good. All right, let me check in my outline to see if I'm missing anything. Oh, I was going to do elapsed time. I'll do another lookup for that one. So remember that we had to save it as an XLSX. We combined the worksheets into one workbook, and we included a common field in both. For this video, or this Excel, I can still do pivot tables, so let me go ahead and show you that. So a pivot table is you just click here in the top left to select all your data, and then you go to Insert, Pivot Table, and it will go into a new worksheet. So I say, okay, I want it to be in a new worksheet, and then I can have my AR status as column labels, and my years of education as row labels, and then my created on, I'll just put that in the values, and it will give me a count. So this way I can see how each of these years did in auto review, or how each of these auto reviews did in years. So this shows me that I had in that year 68 with automatic denial, and of those they had this many years of education. So I could just highlight this, and then it would give me an average of 4.85 years of education. Something that I always find really useful is I like to move these around. Since it thinks that each of these is a text, that's why it thinks that 10 comes before 2, because alphabetically the number 1 would come before the number 2. I don't know if that made sense, but that's how you would do a pivot table. Now I'll go back into MMS and I'll do another loan application advanced find to show how you can do elapsed time within Excel once you've exported it. So all I need to do is add another column. Let's do throughput time or turnaround time. So I'll add in a column for actual close date. That will be our end point for the loan application, and the created on will be our beginning point. So if I can subtract the two, that will give me my turnaround time, or my elapsed time that it takes to process a loan application. So I hit OK, and I go to results. I'll export my results, and I'll say that I want all of my records, and go ahead and open these. So what I always like to put my columns as close together as I can. So this one, I'll need it to be a number, and this one will be elapsed time. And then the formula I'll use is just a basic subtraction. So I hit equals, I do one column, subtract the other column, and voila. So there are 124 days between September 7th, 2011 and January 1st, 2012. That was a really long loan application. So then I just click through, and then that will give me all of them. Here at the bottom right, you can see that the average throughput time is 51.3 days. I have a count of 909 records, and the sum, it doesn't really make sense to add all of your days, but if you needed to, maybe so that you could find an average per person, then you have that here also. All right, so that's how you do elapsed time. Now I could do another pivot table, and maybe I want to know if a certain AR status takes more or less elapsed time. Then I'll go ahead and select all my data. I click here at the top right, and then I say Insert Pivot Table. It will go to a new worksheet, and let's say that I put my AR status along the row labels, and then I'll put elapsed time for the values. It defaults to count, but a count really won't help me here, so maybe I should summarize my values as an average. And then I can see that the public records, those obviously take the most time, and then the okay to move forwards take the least time. Let me take off a few of these decimals just to make it easier to look at. Yeah, but then the others seem to take just about as much time, whether it's an automatic denial or a further review. And that's useful information because then you can predict how much time that you're going to spend on a loan application based on how they did an auto review. And that can help you determine how much it will cost you to process that loan application just based on manpower and how much time you're spending. So we have covered a few basic formulas and how to do those exports from Advanced Find to Excel. If you have any further questions, you can call me. Again, my name is Ruth Easterling, or you could email me at reasterling@acciontexas.org. Thanks again for your time.